So if I told you this was a solid third-person adventure game set in a place that has been ravaged by like millennia-old civil war, you've got basically a compass and almost unguided mapless exploration. It's done in open zones, not open world, so you're not going to get completely lost. But it's got more puzzles, historic clues, investigations, keys, caverns, and just so many things to figure out and solve that I think even Indiana Jones would blush. Depending on what gameplay style you like, I know a few of your heads are going to be like, that sounds kind of cool. Now, if I also said this was a third-person melee action game with unique enemies and a combat system that actually rewards aggression, you've got weapon and ability build variety that's going to lead to a lot of unique playstyles for each person who picks up the controller, and all of that's set in a fictional but grounded country kind of on Earth. I think some of you are going to be like, oh, sweet, an action game that's kind of got a unique setting to it, and definitely some unique looking weird enemies. Now, the cool thing is, I don't know how they did it, but I think Rogue Factor pulled it off. This is the studio who made it. I did go up to see them back in a few months ago. I went up to Canada where they're based, and they basically pulled off like Uncharted meets Dragon's Dogma meets Tunic, and it works. And after about 30 hours to roll the credits, and I probably solved maybe about 75%, I would guess, but not all of it. I checked some of the trophies and, achievements and stuff, but 75% probably. I gotta tell you, they did something really great here. It may get lost in the mix of so many releases, but if you're looking for something that's gonna test your reflexes, but also kind of make you flex your gray matter, you're gonna enjoy this one. So I had a great time, so let's talk about my review for Hell Is Us. Now, just to be clear, I'm not going to solve any puzzles. I'm not going to show you any secrets. I'm probably going to be pretty vague a lot of the time because I don't want to give a lot away. A lot of it is like your first time to talk to an NPC or explore things. What I am going to do is give you examples. Like, I'm probably going to go walk over and fight that guy to show you combat. I'm going to talk to the very first NPC to give you an example of how some of the basics of how the world presents you with information. There's going to be a couple basics in here, some early things that are actually in the demo, but I really want to keep everything a secret. So if you're worried about spoilers, you want to go in fresh, you could listen the whole way and probably really be safe, but honestly, you're probably safe to watch this review and avoid spoilers. I make an effort to really not show much of anything besides the basics and how, systems and weapons and gear might work. So just wanted to say that up front. Also, I was provided a copy of this game by the studio, Rogue Factor, Nacon the publisher, DeadGoodMedia for PR. Thank you guys for the copy of the game. They made this review possible, so hopefully you enjoy it. So I know that's quite an introduction. I know we're standing here in the middle of a marsh. So, where to begin? We should probably begin right here with our main character. You are Remy. He was sent away from his home country by his mother to live outside of Hadia. It's this border-locked country, as I said, torn apart by civil war for a while. And through a quick backstory cinematic, which I don't want to show you because honestly it's cool enough alone, you can see it in the demo if you want to, but the cinematic alone is like, this is interesting, kind of has me cooked. You joined the ON Peacekeepers, basically picture the UN. You joined the Peacekeepers, and you were doing that so you could try and get back into Hadia to try and find your parents because they sent you away when you were like 6. So you're trying to get back in. Civil war breaks out, you're unable to actually get back in, and at that point you kind of get as close as you can, you grab some gear, you book it across the mountains, and you actually kind of run your way into the country, and that's where the game actually begins. So when you get here, then you realize you're like, oh, this is not great. Country's been ravaged by civil war, the calamity's going on, everything has gone completely sideways, and the deeper you dig, the worse it seems to get. Some of the NPC dialogue can actually give you a sense of how high tensions are between the two main factions. Even just like an early discussion is really going to kind of tell you what one side thinks of the other and how deep these two are divided. Now, if you keep your eyes peeled as you explore the world, some of the imagery is just unsettling. You've got bodies, busted out tanks, holes in buildings, things like that. The world's been through a lot, and even it's like I can put away my drone. Just kind of hangs out on my back. But the world's been through a lot. And also the Calamity, the enemies, which I'll show you later, they also want to take you out. So nothing is really great. And one of the early images that you see, this is in the demo, we'll come back to it, but I just want to show you the reveal. While I'm doing this, I want to talk about the sound. If you can hear just like the way the steps go, the way the animations run, the way the steps are, but it's also the music and the weapon swings that go with it. Everything is just like, the sound department did a fantastic job. I know this is a bit of a tangent, but I don't actually have a spot for it in my review, but it is excellent. And just the music as well kind of fits everything else. The enemies and the sound behind them. We'll talk about the hazes, but when like rage enemies are out there, they're literally screaming at you, and the tones, it's just like unsettling, not alien, but foreign. And it's just, it fits. Like, this is like, picture an alternate universe that's like 50 hertz off. It's just that like slightly alien, unsettling, foreign sounding, but they nailed the tone for the whole game because it is just a little off. It's not a great place to be, but it's also a little different. And just the sound design the whole way through, I just got to give them props. It fit top to bottom. I think they did a great job with that. But the imagery that you're going to see from the first section, and I'll show you a little bit there. We'll go back here in a minute. This is your APC. You eventually kind of get the keys to an APC, so you've got it to travel around between these different zones. Second zone you come to is the Akasa Marshes. And when you get here, what's going to happen is, not too far in, you get a quick sense of how bad things really are. You can talk to the first guy. He's got a pretty rough story, but this one is going to do it real quick. As you come down the hill, you're like, okay, we're in a bit of a, you know, it's like take an Eastern European fictional country. Is this what the rock structure and the mountains and then the trees are all going to look like? Yeah, kind of fits, and it looks pretty good the whole way through too. For a AA team, visually, this thing, they did a great job. Again, combat, the animations, the enemies, they're unique, they're weird, they're trippy. It's all over the place. But as you come down this hill, this sets the tone right here. This one opening scene is pretty brutal, I'll be honest. You come down and you see a light, and then you see an excavator, and then you see what's in the hole. It is a mass grave. It's dark, there's flies around, but that spotlight is on the mass grave, so you can't miss it. It is intentional because they want you to see what's here and what has happened. And you're going to see this guy kneeling down over here, holding, as you can see, a body. And
Why?
you can see
Why is this happening?
Camille, oh my baby. And what I didn't even catch the first time,
Oh, my baby.
Anna,
Anna.
my baby girl.
Baby girl.
Underneath that blanket right down here on the ground, that's his daughter. It's brutal. And this is just like, this is a brief NPC interaction, not one of the more in-depth, like, major ones.
We got
So he says
separated
they got
during
separated.
evacuation in Tulsa.
The screaming, the panic, he'd lost him in the crowd.
Panic. I finally traced them back to Jova, but I'm too late. I'm too late. Oh, Camille, forgive me. I'm too late.
It's early on, but there's just a lot of emotion, and it hits a lot harder because of what you're standing next to. It's rough. And
Without one of their belongings, I can't even give them a proper Palamist burial.
so that's one of the two factions. One's the Palamist, and then you've got the Sabinians, and you kind of see where the state of the two are at this point. Palamists are a bit more passive. Sabinians are a bit more of the militaristic front at this point. But he also mentions, without one of their belongings, I can't give them burial. And you see he has the option for trade. This is how part of this game works. Something in the dialogue is going to get mentioned, and it's going to say, hey, if I find one of their belongings, maybe I can bring it back to him. And you can do that, and what's really cool about it is if you bring it back to him, for one, he's very thankful. But, you know, you'll give it to him, and while you run around back in the zone, because you can travel to a different zone, and then come back here, give it to him, and then maybe go away, and then if you come back again and check, he's actually going to have left his position. He's going to have buried the bodies. I forget if they're, like, over there or somewhere else, but if you check, you'll find a couple unmarked graves where he buried them. And the world will change depending on what you do. So even just like, they're called good deeds, what those are, but all the mysteries, the investigations, things change as you go through. So even if it's smaller world effects, they matter. And while you may not change an ending or something, every little story can have an effect. and everything that you do or help or solve can make a difference for somebody in this game, in this world. And that's what I really like. I enjoyed everything. All the little pieces add up. Like the sum is greater than the, the sum of the parts is greater than the whole thing. And I'm probably screwing up that saying, and I know I am. But it works. Notice how you see Sabinian territory. Not a great look there, since they're calling that out, and he's a Palamist, so he's on the wrong side of this area. But that's the idea, is this whole area has been torn apart and destroyed. You've got two factions that are just so far deep into their division. It's not great for either of them, and as you work through these areas, you get to see a whole lot of pain, anguish, and as you kind of learn, it's a recent civil war, so it's just like a fresh coat of death and destruction, kind of everywhere, on top of the calamity with these weird, just trippy looking enemies, and some very strange things happening. There's something deeper going on as well. So just the overall atmosphere of every person you interact with is going to be like, every person's dealing with their own demons and their own pain and their own situation. You're going to see very different perspectives a lot of the time, and the more you talk to them, you'll figure it out. So it was like, the game's probably not for like the faint-hearted, but it is a really interesting journey to go on. I don't want to say it's cool, because that might be the wrong tone, but it is a very interesting journey. It's going to hit you a little bit, but as you accomplish things, you feel like you're making some change in this world, and just the feeling you get as the story progresses forward and some major characters move in certain places, things happen, and you feel like by the time you get done, you've actually accomplished a lot. So as I said, it took me about 30 hours, and I feel like I actually did so many things. I mean, you find a group of people and you help them evacuate an area, and then they actually leave and they're not standing there. Not a lot of games always do that. Sometimes it's just like you move forward and they supposedly do that, but as you're traveling back and forth between these zones, you actually get to see the progression of what happens. And I know I'm kind of harping on this, but it's a big deal, because a lot of that stuff starts to like really make a difference in how your game state feels the farther you get along. So each zone in this game is going to bring you face to face with two things: lots of enemies to fight and lots of mysteries to solve. And the game doesn't give you much, as I said. It's just a compass to start. Eventually you get the drone and the sword. That's a little bit later than where I am right now at the very beginning. And it's one of the few games, the farther I went into it, I had like my notepad out, my notes were getting a lot more detailed and intricate. It really is a game that's going to make you kind of think and put all the pieces together. Now, the easiest example that I can give you is just this opening section. You're going to talk to this gentleman down in here. The first guy you bump into, you can't go very far without it. For one, great voice acting, and this is where I'm going to kind of demonstrate part of this.
You must be lost to wander around Sinedra Forest. I'm afraid I have very little to offer.
Just the tone of the voice is very distinct and unique. The animations, how he looks at you, the way he moves his hands. Maybe even if it's not the most high fidelity, depending on what system you're playing on. I'm lucky enough to be playing at 4K and it looks pretty crispy, but it's just the way everything is delivered.
You're welcome to stay and catch your breath. Frankly, I could use the company.
So you've got two ways to talk to the major NPCs. The major NPCs are going to be involved in your investigations, and then also you'll see you can get context about the world.
Who
you
are
can get a little context about him.
The name's Ernest Cadell. My family has tilled the earth here for generations.
He talks about the Sabinian army came to stay with him. He basically came back to find his son's bodies left there, and he had to go bury him. You literally walk by the graves, and you may not even notice him in the opening of the game. The world's not been through this. It's just rough the whole time. The village of Jova. That's what he's looking for, because he's trying to find, at least he knows his father was a blacksmith in Jova. That's all he knows. He's asking where it's at. Now you also notice on the right side of the screen, I can ask about Hadia, I can ask about the Civil War, I can ask who the Peacekeepers, what he's heard about them. That's kind of how I got in there. And then the Sabinians themselves, who he tells you eventually, are kind of the other side of things. So,
Do you know where the village of Jova is located?
It's in Akasa Marshes. It's quite a ways from here. I'm afraid you're going to need a vehicle. Unfortunately, I have none. A group of
it tells you there's soldiers that came through, they might be able to help you, where can I find the APC? And this is just a small tease of how some of this works. You're going to ask where the APC is. You also will notice he said it's in Akasa Marshes. So I've talked to the right person. I know I need to go to Akasa Marshes. And then also, I keep saying it, Akasa Marshes, but oh well. And when you ask, where can I find the APC?
Where can I find the...
They parked their APC just beyond the woods, to the north. Once in the woods, follow the wind chimes. They will lead the way through. I hung them in the trees so my son...
So he's going to give you a key to the north part of his farm. And then the thing that you'll notice he said is, you know, follow the wind chimes. It seems very obvious. It's very simple. And no one puzzle is going to be the same. And this one's pretty obvious to see. But for a side note, you want to ask about the country of Hadia.
President Yanko, no matter how you feel about the bastard, he held everything together. His grandiose vision of unification kept a fragile peace together. That and his excessive brutality. He was the one that turned Hadia into a prison. No one was allowed out or in, keeping old grudges bobbling on the pot's rim, just waiting to boil over. When President Yanko blew his head off, the hand holding the lid was gone. War was inevitable.
That is one of so many pieces of just like general knowledge you can get from all the NPCs, and it just fills in so much more about this world. And I mean, the writers and the team who did like built the narrative and the environmental storytelling and all of these little general knowledge bits that you will get really lets you get a sense of like, I got a pretty good I got a good history of what happened in this world. I kind of understand this group did this, and then this happened, and here we've got this president, and then he ended his life, and now war broke. All of that stuff goes on, and like the way they build this world around you and just give you all the pieces to start building this giant tapestry in your head of everything in this world, it's a fantastic job. And it's like, in this adventure game set in this pretty war-torn world, you have a really good idea of what happens in this place if you want to. These are optional. The general knowledge is optional. The investigation's how you're typically going to move story and progression, get to new areas and stuff like that. But then when you get done, you're going to notice it's going to tell you you've got a new area. So you can travel between areas with the vehicle, but you have to get the vehicle first. And you'll get to know a little bit more of the blacksmith of Jova, the village of Jova. He's Ernest Cadell. And if you come in here, you're going to see the investigation. You can see that you've got Ernest Cadell down here. You can see where he's at. And you've got these investigations you'll search through. You'll see your inventory. You've got a couple of items. Now I've got the keys to the farm. And this is just one piece of an investigation. It's very early on. That's why I don't mind showing you, because it is how the game starts. You have to figure this out to go any farther. And you'll come up here. There's a cow, by the way. And it's a key. Pretty, you know, nothing specific about the lock. You know it goes here. So many keys, so many locks, so many things that fit in other things to open stuff all over the game. That's just a prime example. But the one thing he mentioned was the wind chimes, and you can hear them. This is one of the probably more obvious. A lot of things are more subtle. They're not going to be quite as like follow the wind chimes for the path kind of thing. This is just like a really basic warm-up of how things are going to work, but it's that idea of, in the dialogue, he says follow the wind chimes. They can be context clues, they can be numbers on a book, they can be who knows what, to put passwords together, to figure out the order of what codes to put in where. There's so much around the world to let you explain what happens in this place, and that's kind of how this goes. Then you'll come up here, you've got another one. So this guy, you can see the door's shut. He's not doing great. You can come up here and talk to him.
You found me.
He can't see,
Excellent.
obviously.
12.
You can ask him who he is. He got separated from his unit there behind the door that's now shut. I'm messed up. Who's got the key to the APC? The captain does. You'll find him with the big red poncho. He's like, I really need help.
We have a med kit in the camp.
And basically it says, go find the med kit in the camp up the hill. Again, camp up the hill. We marked the trees. And if you can get me the med kit, I'll tell you how to get to...
Who has the APC?
The sergeant
You
has
know,
it.
it's like I'll tell you how to get the key, and we'll go from there. So you got to get him a med kit. And as you walk up the hill, you're going to notice a little bit of lighting. And then if you come over here, you're going to see a tree with an X on it. I'm not going to go any farther than that, but that's the idea. And the whole game is like this. Some of the zones are bigger, some of the zones are smaller. You don't have too many enemies to deal with first, but that doesn't take too long to happen once you get inside and get your sword and get your drone, and then you get the introduction of combat and the health system and all of those pieces. I'm going to go back to the other zone to show that stuff to you, but that is how this works. And kind of, if you've heard the saying, the pin is mightier than the sword, in this game, I would say they're equal. The pin and the sword balance the scale. Truly, the action, plus also the problem-solving adventure, makes the wheel go round. And in this game, one does, have to happen for the other one to happen. If you want to find and get to a new zone and fight new enemies and get different gear and explore, you're probably going to have to fight the enemies that let you get to the different places so you can unlock and discover new things. And it's, a back and forth the whole time. It really is integral is what I'm saying. So if you're looking for a game that is going to be Souls-like or action RPG the whole way through, you're kind of barking up the wrong tree, because this truly is half and half. You've got pretty legit action combat, unique builds, abilities. I can imagine so many players not finishing with the same setup or loadout or abilities or anything like that. But on the other side, you're all going to have to use your brain and make some notes and figure out and solve the puzzles to be able to get all the way through. So it is a half and half game, and it's very refreshing to have something as unique as this is. And I think the small open zones that you can explore, some smaller, some bigger, but the zone instead of open world, make this like so much that you've got to figure out in this kind of unguided exploration a lot more manageable. And thankfully, I think it really works. So yeah, the pin and the sword balance the scale, because guess what? You're going to have to do both, and you're going to have to do both all the way through the game. So that's like kind of the early introduction of the subtlety of what an NPC might say in dialogue, or they might mention a computer in a certain place that they use. I mean, some of this stuff is subtle, so it's like paying attention, making notes really will make a difference. And then as you explore, you'll find things that are completely unrelated, and then there's different secrets and world puzzles to solve. There's just so much out there. And honestly, it feels good to solve a lot of this stuff, because then you're like, how do I figure this one out? Maybe I'll come back to it later. And then things click and you figure out the order of operations for something. You're like, finally, got this one done. And it's just cool to solve all of these things. Some are easy, some are hard, some are really intricate, some are multi-zone, some are multiple pieces in the same zone. There's just a lot of different variety, like shape, size, fashion, and form to the puzzles and mysteries and investigations. So you will be doing a lot of different things to kind of figure it all out. Alright, so I talked about the story, the environments, the puzzles, and all that stuff. The other half of this is the combat. So first thing we got to talk about is like your gear. May as well do this first and get it out of the way. You're going to have two different weapons that you can equip. They're going to start neutral. First time you upgrade them, you have to pick a limbic sphere. If I come down here, you notice you see ecstasy or terror. These are neutral right now. Eventually, when you go from grade 1 to grade 2, you have to pick one. So it locks that limbic sword into a limbic sphere damage type. And it's either rage, grief, or the other two I showed you. And they have their respective colors of like red, blue, yellow, and green. In here, you'll see that you'll find more than one copy of a limbic sword. It's just the limbic weapons are the only thing that can damage the enemies in this game. That's why they all start that way. You'll find multiple swords, so you can eventually have like, hey, here's a sword of this type, and then here's a sword of this type, or you just might find an ecstasy sword, and it'll just be locked in and partially leveled up already. All depends on where you find it, how far you progressed in the game. You also notice that you've got glyphs. As soon as you level up to that next grade, the higher the grade, the more glyphs you're going to be able to equip to it. And once you pick a damage type, you're also going to be able to pick only glyphs of that type. So if it's rage glyphs, or neutral glyphs. You can use both. So you have 3 glyphs there. Then you're going to have your active relic. That's something you can power up. Passive relic, always doing what it's doing, hence it's passive. You've got your defensive gear, which is going to give you extra endurance, so that's more stamina. A little bit of damage protection between these two. Stamina cost reduction for certain things. Actually, limbic powers, so if you're very wounded, your stamina is much cheaper use. That's a nice benefit early on when you're in a pinch. The defensive gear can get leveled up, so it gives you more endurance, more defense. All of those things progress as you work through the game, and you really can have some unique loadouts in the game, and I really appreciate that. Also, you'll notice you have limbic energy on the sword, 750. It's the white bar in the middle. And here you've got limbic energy of 500. That's the energy that you use on that weapon to be able to actually, one, do your charge up attacks, or you're going to use that for your glyph energy. And when it comes to, say, your weapons, you can switch between them. So I've got this one, and then maybe I want to do a charge up attack. Notice I'm actually going to use that limbic energy, but if I switch to my axes, my limbic energy is full. So you actually have the ability to use the limbic energy completely on one, switch mid-battle, and use the limbic energy on the other one. It's a really great system. So you've got a lot of variety in how your character is going to play out, and it's really up to you with what glyphs, what damage types, what defensive relics you equip, what you upgrade, all of that stuff. So I would imagine by the end of the game, you're going to have a whole bunch of different Remys that finish this game, and unless you just like go off of a guide, everybody's probably going to feel a little bit different. Now, the thing to know about the combat system is it's unique in the sense that you've got your block, and you actually can parry specific attacks. For the hazes, which I'll show you a little bit later, those actually have a very specific like white flash to them. When they do that, you can kind of do a parry, and the parry is going to break part of their posture. When you go to do a normal parry or just a block, you'll just take the stamina hit. It's actually not going to chip your health, but you will take the stamina hit, and if your stamina runs out, you will get staggered and probably get beat on for a bit. The difference is when you start to swing, you notice your stamina goes down. But if I take a hit and my health goes down, my max stamina is tied to my max health. So if I go half health all of a reason because I took a bit of a beating, I have half my stamina. And if you think about that in real life, it does make sense, because if I just got the crap beat out of me, I'm not going to be really like, you know, jumping around like a spring spry chicken or anything. I'm going to be moving a little slow. But the nice thing is they give you a system that lets you get it back. It's kind of like an active reload, because as you do certain attacks, you'll see the health bar will start to show this little gray, and then when it flashes white, that's your perfect timing to actually hit its right button or right one, whatever it may be, and then you can actually get that timing and earn it back. So looking at this guy, I'm going to take a hit or two, see what he does. So there's the hit. So now I've got my stamina's a little bit lower. So if I do a swing, see that little pulse? So that's the actual flash attack for the parry. Notice his posture's lower. Music cranks up a good bit. And again, when it goes to that little white flash where there's a circle around him, I actually like to look at the health gauge. You can get that health back. But if I go for multiple, and if you do a full like double parry and their whole posture breaks, you get a full nice animation finish. So we got another guy. Actually, he's across there, so I'm going to run up and show you this one. But that's kind of the combat system, and you can switch anytime mid-battle if I want to use axes, if I want to do a big charge-up attack. And your drone's also part of this too. You don't actually have to have him out. He'll automatically pop out. But the only ability I have right now is the distraction ability. But what that's going to do is if you have multiple enemies, and this is like one of the first things you get, I can go up there and distract him, and it basically takes him out of commission for a little while. It really does keep him, but this also allows you to charge up a big attack. 1, 2, and that lets me get a big attack off. But as soon as he's been hit once he's distracted, your distraction has to go through cooldown. So now I'm going to take a bit of a hit. So I've lost a good chunk of health. That didn't feel great. So, but if I get 4 hits, say for example 1, so I only got a little bit back there, which is not great. But if I wander up here, maybe go to the left a little bit, there should be another enemy over here. And this is what you're going to do. You're actually going to do a bit of a dance with these enemies for a little while, trying to earn your health back. So here we go. That's going to be... And notice the more hits I get off, the more health that I can get back. That's the biggest thing. It's exponential. So 1 hits this little chip, 2's a bit more. If you can get your like 4 or 5 hit combo off, you can almost refill your health bar in 1 full attack. Now, this is going to be the example of a haze. Now, normally they're not actually outside of the body of the walker like this, but you'll notice you've got that big squirrely thing over there, and this may be a stupid thing to show you, but hopefully I can survive it, even though I am a little low on health at the moment. So you also are going to have some consumables. Maybe. Yeah, so I've got some health packs, so I can use one. And you can even put those into your loadout for quick use items. So it's nice to be able to do that. So I'll go ahead and use one of these for some health back. But the hazes are... they're basically connected by a tentacle, a cord, a cable, whatever you want to call it, from the center of it. Normally, you'll walk around and you'll see one of these guys and they actually have it inside of them. And you'll see that the actual hollow walker has a bit of a color to it. And when they have a color kind of slightly radiating out of their chest, the thing's going to pop out. Some of them are a little bit more daunting like that one, and it's just like hanging out outside. So what you would typically do, and this comes up a lot, is you'll have your drone distract the hollow walker. And the main reason you would have the hollow walker, basically the, you know, the white enemy with like the black face and stomach, those are immune until the haze, the colorful thing, is dead. And when it loses its health, you can do damage to the big guy. The difference is you only get to distract once, but you really can't do much until that thing's taken out. So you really got to distract, go after the other one, try and do as much as you can to survive it. Then once the distraction is hopefully lasted long enough, you can come back over, work on the other one, and take it out. So I'll show you guys what that looks like here. I'm going to go for the distract, and I'm going to kind of run over here. So this one's probably more ecstasy. It's a little weird. So that's a bit... so you saw that white flash? That's the same as like a parryable attack. Now you see that I can get a nice little finish on that one. And then now as that sound goes, now I can get an attack on this guy. And you'll see the kind of the glow out of the chest. And this guy's going to be much more difficult because you got both to go on right now. But if you get those exponential attacks, you've got a much better shot at getting more of your health back. So the combos are a really, really good way to refill that health gauge. But you hear the sounds of the enemies, those weird whines, and the rage enemies, the red ones, they'll scream at you, like truly screaming. Grief is going to be sadness. It's like blue. It almost looks like tears. Terror is going to be about like being frightened and scared and stuff like that. And the glyphs and everything tie into these like emotional changes and stuff that you're going to go through. So this is just a little bit of a tease of the combat system, but those hazes are a game changer. There's different tiers of enemies. The hazes can go through different levels and escalation that you'll see. So this progression that you're going to work through in the whole game, both your gear, the tier of your weapons, the tier of the enemies, they go through multiple levels as well. It all progresses through the game. And even as you venture one direction and then come back, you might see tougher enemies as the story's progressed along that appear in some areas, even though you may have cleared them out. What you will notice is when you kill an enemy, they stay dead. I could even go jump off a cliff and die and run back by here. As long as I'm in this zone, this one's still going to be dead. So it's not like a Souls game where you got to go run back to your body and pick up your souls. There are no souls. The little shards you pick up are just a currency you use. But it's just all of these little pieces come together to make a system that's a bit unique, a bit, you know, pulled from a couple different places, but it really does work. Like this, for example, this is where I get the bull charge with the drone. So if I come in here and I equip this thing, you're going to notice that I can now use my drone, even though it's just on a cooldown, and I can do this drone attack and get a nice charge forward. It's also a good way to blast and do damage to multiple enemies. This is like a letter. He might tell you something, but you'll read that one when you figure it out. That is a very, very trippy thing that you can figure out when you get there. I've got a little flashlight that there are so many dark places. I think I left my flashlight on for almost the whole game. So that's kind of an overview of like how combat feels. And the system, once like I got a feel for it, it feels a little clunky at first. But as you get your abilities, you get a little bit more stamina to work with. You kind of understand the parry and the timing. There's some enemies that still gave me some trouble, but overall, on balanced, I felt like the difficulty was like a very fair ramp up the entire time, and the challenge was overall reasonable, but not too bad once I got a feel for the combat. It took me a little bit to get comfortable. After a couple hours, I was like, I kind of got this, and I really started to get a hang of it. But yeah, this is this world that's just been through so much, and there is so much in here that I'm not showing you, and there's also so much that you can't even see. So I'm trying to keep it vague, trying to keep it simple, but yeah, there's a lot to find in each one of these zones. So if you're an exploration type person, this is definitely a game where you have a whole bunch of stuff to find and also figure out. As for everything else, I have no idea how the recording is going. Hopefully it's fairly smooth. I tried to turn up the graphics so it actually would hopefully look good while I played, so hopefully it's been a pretty smooth recording. But I generally had a good time. Now I've got a very, very high PC. I'm not going to lie that it's like anything besides basically the top tier. But, I mean, depending on if I crank it up and I'm running 4K 60 pretty high, there's some DLSS in there. The most I noticed was like maybe a couple random frame drops here or there. The weirdest one, and I honestly would say it's almost like over on one of those walls over there, it's like as I walked up, it's like the texture loaded as I got closer. It was like a very specific proximity loaded like draw distance, and normally it's like not something that I noticed. There were a few times here and there where it was like really, really noticeable though, and it's just like an odd thing. Must have been just the way that, you know, that one texture was programmed or loaded in or something strange. More often than not, just running around, I don't really see that. I don't notice like grass really popping in a lot of places. But when you do, it definitely sticks out like a sore thumb, so it's like an odd thing. Maybe a patch or two later, they'll smooth that stuff out. But it's not something I saw a lot of, but when you do notice, it was like, it was quite noticeable. It was really weird. One thing I will say, and this is like a perfect example. As you run around in these zones, there are some really cool like unlocks or doors or things that are like, oh, this is like almost a Dark Souls reveal of a path that I went on before, and now I've gone around to the other side and opened a door, and there's this massive shortcut that I can do. And as you're going to revisit these zones, like you're not going in there on your first time through, as you're going to revisit these zones, having as much freedom to explore would be nice. So, like, for example, this bridge, I would love it if there was just, like, a drop bridge that I could drop down over there once I had fought my way all the way around and come all the way back over here. So then when I was running around in this area from, like, you know, say my second time coming back to this area, I could just run straight across and get over there. But no, that's not there. But then in some of the tunnels you run around and some of these little shortcut doors that open up, you're like, oh, that is actually a cool shortcut. So it's like, it's half there. And I wish it was just all the way there. But this is another one. Like, if I'm going to go under this power plant, I know I can't go very far. But if I go all the way over there, there is a little ramp right here where I can walk over. But I just can't walk that direction afterwards if I, like, let something down. It's those types of things that are, like, I understand they want you to explore the game. But if I have explored all as far as it takes to get over to this, like, boat right here so I can walk over the ledge, let me be able to go back to the other side and let it not be a one-time thing. Because it's not like I have to refight the enemies. They're actually generous about that, but it's just the running around. Some people are probably going to get annoyed that there's no map. There's literally just like destinations on a map, but you have a compass, and that's pretty much your exploration. But honestly, if you're used to using like landmarks and things, that really wasn't an issue, but I'm sure some people will have, you know, a bit of a myth about that. I just kind of enjoyed like, okay, I gotta go over here, gotta go over here. I will be honest, some of the tunnels are a bit confusing. I probably did a couple of circles a few times, but overall, I would say it worked. A couple of the catacombs and tunnel systems are a bit intricate. More often than not, it wasn't too bad, but when you were going back to search for things, especially if you're trying to 100% the game, that's where some of the frustrations on that type of stuff picked up. And as I haven't showed you guys, combat is almost there. It's not like top tier. Liza P, First Berserker Kazan, From Software, Neo. Those are some of my like upper echelon melee action games, and it's that level of polish when you're like, the game didn't beat me, I did. And it's one of those things that doesn't always feel like in this game. Some of the chain attacks that the hazes will do, especially as you get to higher tiers, some of those are a bit of a beating. Some of the things that you'll see with multiple enemies definitely get to be kind of hard to balance properly. So it's like, and then just kind of the weight of the swings, depending on which weapon you're using. Like if I'm using these, maybe it would have been faster. Some things just didn't feel like they should have hit as hard as they should have. So it was like, not quite tweaked and tuned and polished as much as I would have liked. But overall, like, I beat the game. Combat on balanced difficulty is not completely punishing, especially as you upgrade your weapons. But you gotta be on your toes, you gotta be able to block, you gotta be able to dodge some. If you're going for a tough difficulty, there's actually a setting when you go to accessibility and gameplay. I think it's down here, is the death penalty. So when the player is defeated, all enemies killed since the last save point will reset. That's currently off, and I played that way. If you want it on, that's up to you. But if you want to go a bit more Souls rough, all the experience, all the shards you gathered, and all the enemies killed would respawn. Up to you if you want to do that. You can play on hard difficulty and still have death penalty off. Notice the enemy health, the base damage they do, the aggressiveness of them. They're going to feel a little bit different, and you can change this at any time. It's really up to you. The death penalty, though, that is kind of for hard mode players, and if you want to do that, by all means, crank it up, but that just wasn't for me. Didn't feel necessary. But the overall feel of combat is pretty good, just not quite perfect, and I'm sure they would probably admit that as well. But overall, still, for the balance of all the puzzles and the adventure in the world and the soundtrack and everything else, the combat is very solid to pair with everything else. I think that's where it's fair. So I know I didn't show you much of the game, and the main reason is I don't want to spoil anything. And I know it's hard to do reviews, and if I'm being way too vague, I apologize, but overall, this is kind of my summation here. I had a great time with the game. Challenging puzzles I always really enjoy. Puzzle games, when they're done well, I thoroughly enjoy. And this is like, not blueprints with like melee combat, but I mean, I was making notes. Anything that gets me to like really pull out my notepad. You made some legit puzzles that are making me think and stop for a second, maybe stare at my screen for like 5 minutes. I'm like, all right, what is this one? And eventually, like, some of the light bulb moments that I got were awesome. Melee action combat, I'm a sucker for the genre. I love them all. I'm going to try and play them all. And I think they did a really good job with this one, too. I was very pleased with how all this came together because, I mean, by the end of it, I was really kind of into my build, the abilities that I had, the variety that you could get to. Excellent, well done. I mean, if I'm trying to figure out the numbers for a password, and the next thing I do is trying to make sure a rage haze is screaming at me and trying to, like, basically smash my head in, and I'm doing both back and forth through an entire game, that's kind of a good mix of two genres that I really love playing. And they put them together, and they put them together very, very well, in my opinion. So, for my final score, I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. Again, it's a great game, and if you want an equal mix, and a true equal mix of action and adventure, I would say Hell of Us is one I highly recommend, as long as you know what you're getting into. If you're not so much keen on the puzzles, maybe this isn't for you. If you're not so much on the action combat, you're not going to get to do as many puzzles as you might like. If you go in balanced on, like, balanced difficulty, and you kind of take a lighter version of combat with less difficulty, but you want to try and figure out all the puzzles that the game can throw at you in the world, and see how much you can just figure out by context clues with you and a compass, I mean, then you could have a lot of fun. So, my goal with this was to try and explain the world that you're going to be in, the type of game that you're going to be playing, the way the combat feels, the way the combat works, and the level of puzzles and kind of context clues and how much you're actually going to have to get your brain moving up there to really figure all this stuff out. I hope I conveyed that well, and if I did, drop a like below, leave thoughts, opinions, comments, questions. I'll watch the comments on this video for a while, so if you have anything about it, I'm not going to go full like guide or spoilers in the comments, but if you have like, you know, general questions or thoughts or opinions about this whole video, let me know below. Always trying to make my reviews better, and thank you guys for watching this one. I'm sure it got long-winded, but it's getting late, and I'm trying to hit embargo and get some sleep. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one. We're going to be busy in September, so this is video 1 of a bunch this month, so I'll see you soon.